My name is Maya Miller. I am 26 years old, and I live in a small apartment in the city. I looked around the garden. There were 100 relatives standing on the perfectly cut grass. They were holding champagne glasses and smiling at me. It was my birthday. I thought they were there to celebrate me. I was wrong. They were the audience for my execution. My father, William, stood at the front. He waved me over with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He handed me a heavy leather portfolio. It looked expensive. I thought it was a gift. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. It was an invoice. The total was $248,000. The description read, "For room, board, and inconvenience." My stomach dropped. The silence in the yard was heavy. Before I could speak, my sister, Brooklyn, stepped forward. She held out her hand. "Give me the car keys, Maya. It's not yours anymore." Then, the worst part happened. My boss, who was a guest, cleared his throat. He looked at the ground and told me I was fired. He said my parents' reference changed everything. I stood there, holding the bill for my own life. I realized then that this wasn't a party. It was an erasure. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Maya Miller. I am 26 years old. I turned my back on them. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't scream. I just turned around and started walking. The driveway was long. It was lined with expensive cars. My car was there, the one Brooklyn had just taken the keys for. I walked past it. I didn't look at it. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could feel the heat of their stares. I knew they were waiting for me to break. They wanted me to turn around and beg. They wanted me to cry and ask for a ride. I didn't give them that satisfaction. I walked out of the iron gates of the estate. The heavy metal clicked shut behind me. That sound was final. It was the sound of a prison door opening, not closing. I was outside. They were inside. My apartment was 3 miles away. I was wearing high heels. They were nude pumps, expensive and tight. They were shoes meant for sitting at a dinner table, not for walking on asphalt. I took the first step onto the main road. The sun was going down. The sky was a mix of orange and purple, but I didn't care about the view. I only cared about putting one foot in front of the other. The first mile was pure shock. My mind was blank. It was like static on a television screen. I just kept replaying the scene in the garden, my father's smile, the weight of the leather portfolio in my hand, Brooklyn's greedy hand reaching for my keys, my boss looking at his shoes. By the second mile, the physical pain started. My heels rubbed against the back of my ankles. I could feel the skin breaking. A blister formed and then popped. The sting was sharp. It woke me up. I stopped for a second and looked down. There was a small spot of blood on the back of my shoe. I took the shoes off. I held them in my hand. I walked barefoot on the sidewalk. The concrete was rough and still warm from the day. It scraped the soles of my feet. The pain was good. It was real. The pain in my heart was too big to understand yet, but the pain in my feet was simple. It grounded me. I kept walking. Cars drove past me. People looked out their windows. They saw a woman in a nice dress walking barefoot on the side of the road, carrying a leather folder. They probably thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally seeing clearly for the first time. I started to think. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a fight that got out of control. My parents didn't just lose their tempers. You don't type up an invoice for $248,000 by accident. You don't invite a boss to a party just to fire an employee by accident. This was a plan. They had sat down and planned this. They probably had dinner with Brooklyn and discussed it. They picked the date, my birthday. They picked the venue, their garden. They picked the audience, the family. It was a coordinated attack. It was an ambush. Why? The questions circled in my head. Why would they do this? I had been a good daughter. I got good grades. I got a good job. I never asked them for money. I was independent. And then it hit me. That was the problem. I was independent. I reached my apartment building. My feet were dirty and bleeding. My legs shook. I climbed the stairs because I didn't want to see anyone in the elevator. I unlocked my door. My apartment was small. It was quiet. It smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. It was mine. I paid the rent. I bought the furniture. I dropped the leather portfolio on the floor. It made a heavy thud. I didn't go to the kitchen to get water. I didn't go to the bathroom to wash my feet. I went straight to my desk. I sat down and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue. It was the only light in the room. I typed in my password. My fingers flew across the keys. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking anymore. I felt cold. A deep, icy cold inside my chest. My father thought he was smart. He was a businessman. He dealt with contracts and handshakes. He thought power was money and shouting. He didn't understand my world. I am a data analyst. I understand patterns. I understand numbers. I understand how to find things that people want to hide. I opened a terminal window. The black box appeared on the screen with a blinking white cursor. It waited for my command. Okay, I said out loud to the empty room. My voice was raspy. You want a war, we'll have a war. They thought they had taken everything from me. My car, my job, my family. But they forgot one thing. They forgot who I was. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was a threat. And I was going to fight them on my battlefield. I was going to use data. I looked at the portfolio on the floor. For a long time, I didn't touch it. It lay there like a dead animal. Finally, I reached down and picked it up. The leather was smooth. It smelled like my father's office. It smelled like money and old cologne. I opened it again. I took out the single sheet of paper. It was printed on high-quality linen paper. The header had my father's consulting firm logo on it. That was a nice touch. He wanted to make it official. Invoice to Maya from William and Alina, date December 12 RE, repayment for services rendered. I read the list again. Room and board, 18 years. $180,000 clothing and essentials. $25,000 medical expenses. $15,000 education, private school differential. $20,000 inconvenience fee. $8,000 total due. $248,000. I stared at the numbers. The zeros swam before my eyes. The inconvenience fee hurt the most. $8,000 for the inconvenience of having a child. Was that for the nights I cried as a baby? Was that for the times I got sick? I looked at the room and board line. I remembered my room. It was always cold. I wasn't allowed to put posters on the walls. I wasn't allowed to keep the door closed. It wasn't a room. It was a storage space where they kept me. I looked at clothing. I remembered wearing Brooklyn's hand-me-downs. Brooklyn always got the new coats, the new boots. I got what didn't fit her anymore, even if it was too big or the wrong color. And now they were charging me for it. I put the paper down on my desk. I felt sick. But as I looked at it, the sickness turned into something else. It turned into clarity. This piece of paper wasn't a bill. It was a confession. Normal parents don't keep a tab. Normal parents don't calculate the cost of diapers and milk. When you have a child, you agree to take care of them. That is the deal. You don't send a bill 18 years later. But my parents weren't normal. They were narcissists. To them, I wasn't a person. I was an investment. I was like a stock they had bought. They put money in and they expected a return. They expected me to be famous or rich or married to a powerful man so they could brag about me. But I wasn't those things. I was just Maya. I worked in tech. I lived in a small apartment. I was quiet. I didn't give them bragging rights. So in their minds, the investment had failed. They wanted their money back. It made sense now. The way my mother would sigh when I talked about my job. Computers are so boring, Maya, she would say. Brooklyn is modeling now. That's exciting. They hated that I was competent. They hated that I didn't need them. When I was 20, I moved out. I worked 2 jobs to pay my own rent. I thought they would be proud. I was wrong. They were angry. They stopped inviting me to dinner for months. I didn't understand why back then. Now I did. They hate independence. If I am independent, they can't control me. If I pay my own bills, they can't tell me what to do. If I drive my own car, I can drive away from them. That's why they took the car today. It wasn't about the car. It was about mobility. They wanted to ground me like a teenager. That's why they got me fired. It wasn't about the job. It was about the money. Without a salary, I can't pay rent. If I can't pay rent, I have to move back home. I looked at the invoice again. They want me back, I whispered. They didn't want to get rid of me. They wanted to break me. They wanted me to lose everything. My home, my career, my pride, so I would have to crawl back to their house. They wanted me sleeping in my old cold room, asking them for money, depending on them for food. They wanted a slave. They wanted a victim. I felt a fire light up in my stomach. It burned away the sadness. They made a mistake, a big mistake. They thought showing me this invoice would scare me. They thought the debt would crush me. But it didn't. It liberated me. Because now I knew the rules. This wasn't a family relationship. It was a transaction, and if it was a transaction, I could audit it. You want to talk about money? I said to the paper. Okay. Let's talk about money. I turned back to my computer. The cursor was still blinking, waiting. They had sent me a bill for $248,000, but they had forgotten something. I had access to things they didn't know about. I knew where the real money was, and I knew they weren't as clean as they pretended to be. I wasn't going to pay this invoice. I was going to send them one of my own. My phone had been buzzing for 2 hours. It was vibrating on the desk like an angry insect. I looked at the screen. Texts from cousins. Messages from friends who had heard the gossip. Notifications from Instagram. Is it true you got fired? OMG, your dad is so mad. Saw Brooklyn's story, you okay? I didn't open them. I didn't reply. Silence is a wall. I stayed behind my wall. But I couldn't stay silent about my job. That was the first pillar they tried to knock down. I needed to fix it. Immediately. My boss, the one who fired me at the party, was a weak man. His name was Gary. Gary was scared of my father. My father was a big donor to the company's charity fund. Gary probably thought firing me would make my father happy. Gary didn't care about labor laws or fairness. He was a coward. If I called Gary, he wouldn't listen. He would stutter and make excuses. I needed to go over his head. I looked at the clock. It was 9 p.m. Late, but not too late for the people at the top. I searched my contacts for David Henderson. David was the regional director. He was 3 levels above Gary. 6 months ago, our company had a massive data breach. It was a Sunday. No one was answering their phones. I was the only one who noticed the server acting strange. I went in. I stopped the leak. I saved the company millions of dollars in potential lawsuits. David had called me personally to thank me. He gave me his personal cell number. If you ever need anything, Maya, he had said, you call me. I hoped he meant it. My hands were steady as I dialed the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. My heart hammered against my ribs. What if he didn't answer? What if he believed my parents too? This is David. His voice was deep and tired. David, it's Maya. From data analytics. There was a pause. Maya, it's Sunday night. Is everything okay? Is the server down? The server is fine, I said. My voice was calm. I channeled that cold feeling in my chest. But I have a problem. I was just terminated by Gary, at a private party, because of a personal dispute with my parents. David was silent for a moment. Excuse me, you were fired when? 2 hours ago. Gary was a guest at my parents' house. My father is angry with me for personal reasons. He told Gary to fire me. Gary did it in front of 100 people. I kept it simple. Facts only. No emotion. I didn't tell him I walked home barefoot. I didn't tell him about the invoice. I just told him the professional violation. That is highly irregular, David said. His voice sounded sharper now. And illegal. I know, I said. I am one of your top analysts, David. My performance reviews are perfect. I saved the network 6 months ago. I am being punished because my father is a donor. I am calling you because I respect this company. I don't want to file a wrongful termination lawsuit. I just want to do my job. I held my breath. I played the card. The lawsuit threat was subtle, but it was there. David didn't hesitate. Give me 10 minutes, Maya. Okay, hang up, I'll call you back. I put the phone down. The room was silent again. 10 minutes. It felt like 10 years. I stared at the clock on the wall. The second hand ticked slowly. Tick, tick, tick. This was the test. Was I powerless or was I valuable? My parents told me I was nothing without them. They said my success was because of their name. You're only hired because you're a Miller, my mother used to say. I waited. 8 minutes later, my phone rang. It was David. Maya, I'm here. I spoke to Gary, David said. His voice was hard like stone. He confirmed the story. He admitted he acted under pressure from your father. I see. Gary is no longer the manager of your department, David said. My eyes widened. The termination is void, David continued. It never happened. You are still employed. In fact, I am moving you to the senior security team. You'll report directly to headquarters, not the local branch. Gary can't touch you. Your parents can't touch you. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Thank you, David. And Maya. Yes, we're adding a retention bonus. 10% raise, effective immediately. We don't like outside influence in our company. I apologize for what happened. Thank you, I said again. I'll see you on Monday. I hung up. I sat back in my chair. I did it. My parents had tried to cut my income. They tried to make me destitute so I would crawl back. Instead, I got their friend fired. I got a promotion. And I got a raise. For the first time that night, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a grim, tight smile. Strike one. They thought I was weak. They thought I was the little girl who cried when she dropped her ice cream. They didn't know the woman I had become. They didn't know that while they were playing social games, I was building a career based on actual skill. I looked at the invoice again. $248,000. You want money? I thought. I just made more money. But I wasn't done. Reclaiming my job was just defense. I needed to go on offense. I turned back to the terminal window on my screen. It was time to look at the family finances. I was safe for now. I had my job, I had my salary, but that wasn't enough. My parents had attacked me. They had humiliated me. And most importantly, they had handed me an invoice claiming I owed them money. I needed to see if that was true. My father, William, was old-fashioned. He kept his passwords in a notebook in his desk drawer. I knew this because I used to play in his office as a kid, but I didn't need the physical notebook. 2 years ago, my father asked me to set up his home Wi-Fi and his new computer. "You're good with machines, fix it," he had barked at me. I fixed it. And while I was there, I set up a backdoor. I didn't do it to spy on him back then. I did it because I knew he would forget his password and blame me. I wanted a way to reset it remotely so he wouldn't yell at me. Now, that backdoor was my weapon. I typed in the command. Connecting to host. 192.168.1.55. Access granted. I was in his computer. It was too easy. He didn't have two-factor authentication. He didn't have complex firewalls. He was arrogant. He thought no one would dare touch him. I navigated through his folders. My documents, finances, tax returns. I started opening files. I felt like a detective in a movie, but there was no music, just the hum of my laptop fan. I looked at the bank statements first. My parents were rich, but they weren't as rich as they pretended to be. They spent a lot. Country club fees, leasing payments for cars, jewelry. They were bleeding cash to look important. Then I found the folder labeled trusts. My heart skipped a beat. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had passed away 5 years ago. She loved me. She was the only one who really loved me. She used to sneak me cookies when my mother put me on a diet. She used to read to me. When she died, there was a will. My parents told me she left everything to them to manage for the family. I was 21 then. I believed them. I didn't ask questions. I was grieving. I opened the file Grandma Rose Estate Distribution PDF. I read the legal text. My eyes scanned the pages. I hereby bequeath the sum of $500,000 to my granddaughter, Maya. I stopped breathing. $500,000. She had left me $500,000. Specifically to me, not to the family, to Maya, to be held in trust until she reaches the age of 21. I was 26. Where was the money? I started digging deeper. I searched for the account number listed in the will. I traced the transfers. The money had been deposited into a separate account 5 years ago. Then the withdrawals started. Withdrawal, $50,000 transferred to W&E joint checking. Withdrawal, $85,000 purchase. Mercedes-Benz dealership. I froze. The Mercedes, the one Brooklyn drove, the one she bragged about. Daddy bought it for me because I'm his favorite, she had said. He didn't buy it, I bought it. My grandmother's money, my money paid for Brooklyn's car. I felt like I was going to throw up. The betrayal was physical. It twisted my stomach. It wasn't just that they were mean. It wasn't just that they ignored me. They were thieves. I kept looking. Withdrawal, $20,000 renovation contractor. That was for the new kitchen I wasn't allowed to cook in. Withdrawal, $10,000 vacation, Paris. The trip they took without me. They had drained it, all of it. The balance in the trust account was $45.12. They stole $500,000 from their own daughter. They spent my inheritance on themselves and on Brooklyn. And then today they handed me a bill for $248,000. The audacity was breathtaking. It was evil. I sat back, shaking. Tears finally came. Hot, angry tears. I wiped them away roughly. Grandma Rose wanted me to be safe. She wanted me to have a start in life. She knew my parents. She knew they wouldn't help me. That money was her protection. And they took it. They took her love and turned it into sports cars and vacations. I looked at the screen. I had the proof. I had the bank logs. I had the digital signatures, my father's signature, my mother's signature. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was a felony. This was embezzlement. This was fraud. I saved every file. I made copies. I backed them up to a cloud server they couldn't touch. I had come home feeling like a victim. I felt small and erased. But now, Now I was the most dangerous person in their lives. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to take back what was mine. But I saw something else in the logs, something strange. There were monthly transfers going out to an account I didn't recognize. $5,000 every month. The recipient was BS Lifestyle LLC. I checked the incorporation documents for that LLC. The owner was Brooklyn Scarlett, my sister. Wait, my parents said Brooklyn was finding herself. They said she was working on her modeling career, but the bank records showed regular, scheduled payments from my parents' business account to Brooklyn's shell company. And looking closer, the authorization for these transfers came from Brooklyn's user ID. She wasn't just receiving allowance. She had access. I leaned closer to the screen. Brooklyn wasn't just the spoiled golden child. She was an accomplice. I needed to see more. I needed to see exactly what my little sister was doing. I typed in a new command. I was going deeper. I sat in the dark. The glow of the computer screen was the only light. My eyes were tired, but my brain was wide open. I had found the stolen trust fund. That was the first crime, but the logs showed me something else, something active. I was looking at the transfers to BS Lifestyle LLC. $5,000. Every single month. I needed to know where that money was coming from. My parents complained about money constantly. They said the market was bad. They said taxes were too high. So where did they find an extra $60,000 a year to send to a shell company? I traced the deposits into my parents' business account. I saw a pattern. Every month, on the first day, a wire transfer came in. From Kevin and Michelle Miller. Amount $5,000. Memo, Investment Fund Tech Startups. Uncle Kevin and Aunt Michelle. My heart sank. Uncle Kevin was my father's younger brother. He was a kind man. He wasn't smart with money, but he was good. He worked as a contractor. He built houses. He worked with his hands. Aunt Michelle was a teacher. They didn't have millions. They saved every penny. I remembered a family barbecue last summer. Uncle Kevin was drinking a beer. He looked happy. He told me, "Your dad is a genius, Maya. He's helping us invest our retirement savings. We're going to be able to retire early. He's putting it into these new tech companies." I felt sick. I looked at the bank logs again. The money came in from Kevin and Michelle on the first. It stayed in my father's business account for 24 hours. Then on the second, a transfer went out. To BS Lifestyle LLC. Amount $5,000. There were no tech startups. There were no investments. My father was taking his own brother's retirement money. He was washing it through his business account. And then he was sending it to Brooklyn. I typed in the search command for BS Lifestyle LLC. I needed to see the spending. If this was a legitimate company, there should be business expenses. Office rent, equipment, payroll. I cracked the password for the LLC's bank portal. It was Brooklyn on 123. She was so lazy. I opened the statements. Debit, Sephora $450 debit. Delta Airlines first class, $1,200 debit. The Ritz-Carlton $3,000 debit. Gucci $800. It wasn't a business. It was a slush fund. Uncle Kevin was sweating on construction sites, carrying lumber, ruining his back. Aunt Michelle was grading papers until midnight. They were sending that money to my father, trusting him to build their future. And my father was giving it to Brooklyn to buy purses. I felt a rage so hot it made my fingers tingle. This was worse than what they did to me. Stealing from me was one thing. I was young. I could work. I could recover. But Kevin and Michelle, they were in their 50s. This was their life savings. But I needed to be sure about Brooklyn. Maybe she didn't know. Maybe my father just gave her a credit card. Maybe she thought it was his money. I looked at the authorization logs for the transfers. In banking, when you move money from a business account, you need a digital signature. I pulled up the log for last month's transfer. User ID, B. Miller 2 IP address, 192.168.1.55, the house, device, Brooklyn's MacBook Pro action, authorized transfer. She knew. She wasn't just receiving the money. She was logging into the system. She was initiating the transfer from the business account to her LLC. She saw the source of the funds. The line item said Kevin incoming. She clicked approve. I sat back. I thought about Brooklyn at the party today. She looked so perfect. Her hair was shiny. Her dress cost more than my rent. She had demanded my car keys with a smirk. "It's not yours anymore," she had said. She played the part of the innocent, spoiled daughter perfectly. Everyone thought she was just dim. Everyone thought she was just a pretty face who liked shopping, but she wasn't. She was a criminal. She was committing wire fraud. She was conspiring with my father to embezzle money from our relatives. She was looking at her uncle, the man who gave her birthday cards, the man who taught her how to ride a bike, and she was stealing his future to buy expensive makeup. She was worse than my parents. My parents were narcissists, yes. But Brooklyn, she was a sociopath. She felt nothing. I looked at the screen, I had everything, I had the chain of evidence. The trust fund theft from me, the investment fraud theft from Kevin and Michelle, the shell company money laundering. The tax evasion, they definitely weren't declaring this as income. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m., I hadn't slept, I hadn't eaten. My feet were still throbbing from the walk, but I felt awake. I felt powerful. They wanted to erase me. They wanted to make me zero. Instead, they had given me the keys to their destruction. I remembered the invoice they gave me, $248,000. I opened a calculator. My grandmother's trust, $500,000. Interest over 5 years, conservatively, $100,000. Uncle Kevin's stolen money over 4 years, $240,000. My car, which they took, $35,000. Total stolen, $875,000. And they had the nerve to ask me for money. I laughed. It was a short, sharp sound in the quiet room. I wasn't going to sue them. Lawsuits take years. Lawyers are expensive. My parents would drag it out. They would lie. They would charm the judge. No, I wasn't going to court. I was going to the family. My parents cared about one thing above all else, their image. They cared about what people thought. They cared about being the perfect family at the country club. They cared about being the rich, successful benefactors. If I sued them, they could spin it. They could say I was a crazy, ungrateful daughter. But if I showed the truth, if I showed the numbers, numbers don't lie. I started to organize the files. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it The Truth. I dragged the PDF of the will into it. I dragged the bank statements into it. I dragged the logs of Brooklyn's shopping sprees into it. I dragged the email records into it. I was building a bomb, a digital bomb. I thought about Brooklyn again. I wondered if she was sleeping soundly in her silk sheets. I wondered if she was dreaming about her next vacation. She had no idea that her life was about to end. She thought she was the main character. She thought I was just an extra. She was wrong. I clicked on the file for BS Lifestyle LLC one last time. I took a screenshot of the approve button with her username next to it. Got you, I whispered. I was ready for the next step. The sun was coming up. The sky outside my window was gray and cloudy. It looked like it was going to rain. It was fitting. I had the folder. Now I needed to package it. I opened a document editor. I didn't want to just send a bunch of loose files. People get confused by loose files. I wanted this to be a story they couldn't stop reading. I created a single PDF document. Page 1, the cover page. I typed the title in big, bold letters. Family Audit. A financial review. Page 2, the introduction. I kept it simple. Yesterday, I was given an invoice for $248,000 for the cost of raising me. This prompted me to review the family finances to ensure all debts are settled. Below is the result of that review. Page 3, the Grandmother Rose Trust. I put the scan of the will on the left. I highlighted the section about the $500,000. On the right, I put the bank transfer showing the money leaving the account. I added a red arrow pointing to the purchase of the Mercedes dealership. Caption: the money left for Maya's education was used to buy William's business assets. Page 4, the car. I put the receipt for the Mercedes Brooklyn drove. Caption: purchased with funds from the Maya Miller Trust. Page 5. The Kevin and Michelle investment. This was the hardest page to make. I put the incoming transfer from Kevin, then the outgoing transfer to Brooklyn. I put them side by side. Caption: Uncle Kevin's retirement savings are not invested in tech. They are transferred directly to Brooklyn Scarlett for personal use. Page 6, Brooklyn's spending. I listed the purchases. Gucci, Ritz-Carlton, Sephora. Caption: how your investment money is actually spent. Page 7, the conclusion. I wrote a summary. Total stolen from Maya, $600,000 plus. Total stolen from Kevin and Michelle, $240,000 plus. Total due to family, $840,000 plus. My debt of $248,000 is considered paid in full. I saved the file. Family Audit PDF. It was 20 pages long, it was cold, it was factual, it was devastating. I opened my email client, I typed in the recipients. To William Miller Dad, Eleanor Miller Mom, CC Brooklyn Scarlett, CC Kevin Miller Uncle, Michelle Miller Aunt, CC Grandma Rose's estate lawyer, CC the board of directors at Dad's consulting firm. I hesitated on the last one. The board of directors, that would destroy his career. That would end his professional life. I looked at the invoice on my desk again. Inconvenience fee. I added the board of directors. I didn't write a message in the body of the email. I didn't write I hate you or how could you. Anything I wrote would just look emotional. It would give them something to attack. Oh, Maya is just hysterical, they would say. Silence is harder to argue with. I attached the file. The progress bar moved across the screen. Blue, steady. I felt a moment of fear. Once I sent this, there was no going back. The family was over. Sundays were over. Holidays were over. I would be an orphan, effectively. But then I realized I was already an orphan. They orphaned me yesterday in the garden. They orphaned me when they stole my grandmother's money. They orphaned me when they decided I was a balance sheet item, not a human being. This wasn't an attack, it was an autopsy. The body was already dead. I was just showing everyone how it died. I moved the mouse to the send button. My finger hovered over the mouse. I took a deep breath. I smelled the stale air of my apartment. I felt the ache in my feet. I felt the hunger in my stomach. Goodbye, I said. I clicked. Message sent. I closed the laptop. I didn't wait to see if they read it. I knew they would. I stood up. My legs were stiff. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I drank it in one long gulp. Then I went to my front door. I engaged the deadbolt. I engaged the chain lock. I wedged a heavy chair under the handle. I knew what was coming next. The silence was the weapon, but the explosion was coming. I sat on my couch. I wrapped a blanket around myself. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Then my phone lit up. Incoming call. Dad, I watched it ring. I didn't touch it. Incoming call. Dad, incoming call. Mom, incoming call. Brooklyn, the phone buzzed and buzzed. It danced across the coffee table. Then the text started. Dad, Maya, pick up the phone. Dad. What did you send? Mom, are you insane? You sent that to the board. Brooklyn, delete it. Delete it right now. You're ruining everything. I watched the messages scroll by. They were panicking. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Then a different text came through. Uncle Kevin, Maya, is this true? I picked up the phone. I typed one word. Yes, I put the phone back down. The war had started. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one running for cover. I was the one watching the fire. The noise didn't stop. For 3 hours, my phone vibrated constantly. It was like a living thing in the room. My father left voicemails. I listened to one of them. Maya, you need to recall that email. Right now, tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you were hacked. If you don't, I will. I will ruin you. Do you hear me? I will sue you for slander. His voice was shaking. He wasn't angry, he was terrified. He knew that the bank logs didn't lie. He knew he couldn't sue for slander if it was the truth. Then my mother called. Her voicemail was different. She was crying. Maya, sweetheart, please, we can talk about this. We can fix this. We didn't mean to hurt you yesterday. We were just stressed. Please, honey, think about the family. Think about your sister. I deleted it. Think about your sister. That was always the line. I had to set myself on fire so Brooklyn could stay warm. Not anymore. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring. It was a pounding, fist on wood. Maya, open this door. It was my father. I sat on the couch. I didn't move. Maya. I know you're in there. Open the goddamn door. He kicked the door. The frame rattled. The chair I had wedged under the handle held firm. I stood up slowly. I walked to the door. I didn't open it. I stood on the other side. Go away, I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me how steady it was. Open the door, he screamed. Do you have any idea what you've done? The board called me. They're suspending me pending an investigation. Kevin is on his way over to my house with a lawyer. You have destroyed this family. I didn't destroy it, I said through the wood. I just turned on the lights. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we gave you. You gave me a bill, I said. Remember, $248,000, I just paid it. He went silent. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other side of the door. Maya, he said, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Please, just send an email saying it was a joke. I'll give you the money. I'll give you the $500,000. I'll buy you a car. Just fix it. He was trying to bribe me. He still thought everything was a transaction. He didn't understand that some things couldn't be bought. I looked down at the floor. I had printed something out before he arrived. It was a single sheet of paper. It was a printout from the Department of Justice website. Federal Sentencing Guidelines for Wire Fraud and Embezzlement. I slid the paper under the door. It made a soft scraping sound. "What is this?" he asked. I heard paper rustling. "Read it," I said. Silence, long silence. "You taught me to calculate costs, Dad," I said. "You wanted me to know the value of things, so I looked it up. That is the cost of fraud. That is the cost of stealing from your family. You would send your own father to jail." "I didn't send you there," I said. "You drove yourself there, in Brooklyn's car." "Maya, go home, William," I said. I didn't call him Dad. "Go home and talk to your lawyer, you're going to need him." I heard a sound I had never heard before. It was a sob. My father, the strong, arrogant tyrant, was crying in the hallway of my cheap apartment building. "Please," he moaned. "Leave," I said, "or I call the police and show them the files too." It was a bluff. I had already decided I wouldn't go to the police unless I had to. The family knowing was enough. But he didn't know that. I heard him shuffle away. His footsteps were heavy and slow. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I was shaking now. The adrenaline was leaving my body, leaving me weak. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Uncle Kevin. "Kevin, I'm at the bank." The manager confirmed it. "The money is gone." "Thank you, Maya. You didn't destroy the family. You exposed a crime. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. Come over whenever you're ready. You always have a home with us." I stared at the screen. Tears blurred my vision. "You didn't destroy the family." That was the fear. That was the guilt I had been carrying. I thought I was the villain. I thought I was the one breaking things. But Kevin saw the truth. I walked back to the window. I looked down at the street. I saw my father's car pulling away. It swerved a little like a drunk driver. He was gone. The panic was happening in their house now. The yelling, the blaming. Brooklyn screaming because her credit cards were getting declined. My mother crying because her social standing was vaporizing. But in my apartment, it was quiet. It was the first time in 26 years that I felt safe. The fall didn't happen all at once. It happened in agonizing slow motion over the next 3 weeks. I watched it from a distance. I didn't go to the house. I didn't answer their calls. I got my updates from Uncle Kevin and, surprisingly, from the news. First, it was the job. 2 days after my email, my father was formally fired by the board. The character references he had used to get me fired came back to haunt him. The board didn't want a CEO who stole from his own relatives. It was a liability. Then came the lawsuits. Uncle Kevin didn't want to sue, but he had to. He had to recover his retirement money. He filed a civil suit against my father and against the BS Lifestyle LLC. Because of the lawsuit, the assets were frozen. The court ordered a seizure of property to pay for restitution. I walked past the house one day, about 2 weeks later. I stayed on the other side of the street. There were moving trucks in the driveway, but they weren't luxury movers. They were court-appointed liquidation teams. I saw men carrying out the furniture, the antique dining table where I wasn't allowed to speak, the expensive sofas, the art from the walls. It was all being tagged and loaded. It was just stuff. Without the light to hold it up, it was just wood and fabric. Then I saw the car. A tow truck was backing up to the garage. They hooked up the white Mercedes, Brooklyn's car, and then I saw Brooklyn. She ran out of the house. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was messy. She was wearing sweatpants. "You can't take it," she screamed at the driver. "It's mine. My daddy bought it for me." The driver didn't even look at her. He just kept working the levers. The car lifted into the air. "Daddy, do something," Brooklyn yelled. My father walked out of the house. He looked 20 years older. His shoulders were slumped. He was wearing an old t-shirt. He looked defeated. He didn't look at Brooklyn. He just watched the car go. "It's gone, Brooklyn," he said quietly. "But what am I supposed to drive?" she shrieked. "How am I supposed to go to brunch?" "Take the bus," he said. I almost laughed. The irony was perfect. The BS Lifestyle LLC was dissolved. Brooklyn's brand died overnight. When the news came out that she had been funding her lifestyle by stealing from her uncle, her Instagram followers turned on her. The comments were brutal. "Thief, fraud, giving back the money." She deleted her account 3 days later. Without the money and without the social clout, Brooklyn was nobody. She had no degree. She dropped out. She had no work experience. I heard from Aunt Michelle a week later. "Brooklyn got a job," Michelle told me over tea. "Really?" I asked. "Where?" "At the mall, at a clothing store, folding shirts." "Folding shirts?" "Yes." She tried to apply for management, but she has no references, so she's working entry-level, minimum wage. I nodded. It was justice. She was finally working for the clothes she wore. My parents had to sell the estate. After paying back Uncle Kevin, paying back the trust fund money, which went into a blocked account for me, and paying the legal fees, they had almost nothing left. They moved into a 2-bedroom condo on the other side of town. It was a normal apartment. No garden, no gates, just a regular place for regular people. The social circle they loved so much evaporated. The friends who came to the birthday party, they disappeared. No one wanted to be associated with embezzlers. My mother, who used to be the queen of the social scene, was now a pariah. I saw her once at the grocery store. She was pushing her own cart. She looked at prices. She put a box of expensive crackers back on the shelf and picked the generic brand. She saw me. I froze. I was standing in the produce aisle. She looked at me. Her eyes were sad. She looked small. I thought she would scream. I thought she would curse me. Instead, she just looked down at the floor. She turned her cart around and walked away. She was ashamed. For the first time in her life, she felt shame. I watched her go. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt nothing. The cord was cut. She was just a woman in a grocery store. She wasn't the monster under my bed anymore. The kingdom they had built on lies had collapsed, and all it took was one person telling the truth. It has been 2 months since the party. My life is quiet now. I still live in my small apartment. I like it here. It feels like mine. I got the retention bonus from work. I got the raise. And surprisingly, I got the money from the trust fund. The court seized my father's remaining assets to repay it. I have $500,000 in the bank. I haven't bought a Mercedes. I haven't bought designer clothes. I paid off my student loans. I paid off my credit card debt. And I put the rest away. It's my freedom fund. It means I never have to be dependent on anyone ever again. I sit at my desk on a Saturday morning. The sun is shining through the window. I open my laptop. The folder The Truth is still on my desktop. I open it. I look at the files one last time. The invoice, the bank logs, the email, it's all history now. It's a story about a different person. A person who was scared. A person who wanted to be loved by people who couldn't love her. I don't need these files anymore. I don't need the proof. I know who I am. I select the folder. I right-click Delete. A box pops up. Are you sure you want to delete the truth? I smile. Yes. The folder disappears. I look out the window. The city is waking up. I see people walking their dogs. I see couples holding hands. I am alone, but I am not lonely. I have dinner with Uncle Kevin and Aunt Michelle every Sunday. We cook together. We laugh. They don't judge me. They don't send me invoices. They just love me. I realize something important. Family isn't about blood. Blood just makes you relatives. Love makes you family. My parents in Brooklyn, they were my relatives, but they were never my family. I pick up my phone. I have a text from David, my boss. David. Great job on the security audit this week, Maya. The team is lucky to have you. I type back. Maya, thanks, David. I love the work. And I do. I love my work. I love my life. I stand up and stretch. I feel light. The weight is gone. The heavy leather portfolio is gone. The expectations are gone. I walk to the mirror in the hallway. I look at myself. I see a woman who is strong. I see a woman who walked through fire and came out the other side without burning. I am not a victim anymore. I am not a daughter of thieves. I am Maya. And for the first time in 26 years, that is enough. I grab my keys, my own keys to my own simple car, and I walk out the door. The sun is warm on my face. I am free.